Welcome everyone. What a day we have had at the candidates. Overnight leader Jan Nepomniachtchi was beaten by MVL, and to analyze this critical encounter, we have none other than Super GM Vidit Gujrathi. Welcome, Vidit.
I'm glad to be back on the show.
Well, Vidit, exciting times. It seemed like Nepo was running away with the event, and suddenly he was stopped by MVL.
So now they're tied, right? They have the
Yes.
same points, right?
They are both
Uh,
1 point ahead of the field. They are both on 4.5 out of 7.
oh, okay. So plus two. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a game changer in a way for the tournament.
Yeah, it seemed like Nepo was not feeling well after the sixth round. You could see he was coughing. He said, I'm not feeling well. And today he lost. So it seems like MVL is now the one who has the momentum with him.
Definitely, definitely. And I think there are two reasons for Nepo's loss. One was probably that he was unwell, and
Yeah.
the second, even bigger loss, was his opening choice.
French defense.
uh, French defense is also the way he played it because from the opening itself it was not so simple. Actually, he played it against Alekseenko. I thought it was like one-off idea
Yeah.
and not to repeat it, but apparently he kept playing. And
Oh,
these lines are very risky, to be honest. I mean, it's not like it's lost for black, not at all, but the risk factor is very high.
tell us the thinking at the top level, at the highest level. Why is French considered as a shaky opening and not e4 e5 or e4 c5?
Well, it's not like French is considered as a shaky opening. Just it's relative. For example, in Berlin, it's very tough. Petrov, it's like more symmetrical pawn structures. Let's say it's like asking why is QGD more solid than King's Indian? Because of course in QGD it's more symmetrical, right? Queen's Gambit decline. And in French, it leads to imbalances. So when there are more imbalances, the chances of results increase naturally.
Yeah.
And here you make a pretty big concessions in the opening. For example, giving the bishop in win over,
Hmm.
and unless you play well, it's hard to keep the dynamic balance.
So let me rephrase this question. Instead of e4 e5, I could ask, why is French considered worse than Sicilian? Because
Uh,
Sicilian is dynamic, right? I mean, in here there is no symmetry. Then why?
that's true. That's true. Um, in French, whenever the thing is like you give away this dark squared bishop,
Okay.
let's say after fifth move a3, bishop c3, bc, and it has very long-term problems. For example, this diagonal from a3 to f8
Yeah.
is a big problem, and white has more space advantage because of the pawn on e5.
Hmm.
So black's only compensation is the double pawns on c3 and c2. But as you will see, it's very hard to exploit it. Usually, if you manage to exchange the light squared bishop and get some endgame, probably you have some chances. But this weakness of this dark squares, it's not possible to solve immediately because you have given up the bishop. Whereas in Sicilian, uh, you don't concede such a major strategic advantage to the opponent.
Right. So strategically, this is very risky. Although in the game we will see that it's not a one-way fight. Like Black is fighting for his share of chances.
Of course, it has its own plus pros and cons, but somehow the cons kind of outweigh
Yeah.
if you can't play like really accurate.
Okay. So knight e7 and h4 both were seen in the game of Alekseenko and Nepo. Queen c7 was also played, but now I think MVL came up with this new move h5.
Well, new move for this
Yes.
tournament, but h5 is one of the main lines, and that's the point of h4 to play h5 at 6, and then if you play g6, then there will be huge weaknesses, additional weaknesses on the dark squares.
Yeah, and you don't have that bishop, so can't really allow h6. Just to tell the viewers, knight f3 was what was played by Alekseenko, but MVL went h5, and so h6 is kind of forced.
Yes, and now I really like the next move,
Why?
rook b1. Uh, Usually, let's say, I think the normal move is knight f3, for example,
Yeah.
to develop and okay, just a developing move, right?
Mm.
But rook b1 has a very subtle idea. For example, instead of knight f3, you can't play queen g4, which is like a very common idea, right? In Winover.
Yeah.
Because of cd,
Yeah.
and there is this queen c3 issues.
Correct.
Uh, so that's why this rook b1 I find a very clever move, and it was first played by Peter Liko. So it shows that it has got the seal uh, of approval from the
So
best opening players.
you would say that if Peter Leko has played some opening, you can be relatively sure that it's a good line.
Uh, I mean, Peter Liko is of course he was one of the at least leading opening theoreticians. Nowadays he doesn't play so much,
Yeah.
but I've known him, and he had back in early 2000s as well. He used to have some very deep ideas in openings.
Hmm.
So definitely, if you follow him, you can't go wrong, I will say.
Okay, so a good tip for all of you preparing openings: if Peter Liko has played something, you can be relatively sure that it's a good line. Okay, so Rook B1. The point is that you want to play Queen G4 next, and at that point, after CD, Queen C3 won't be fatal as the Rook on A1 is not hanging.
Exactly. And the main point compared to knight f3 is that now you have the this option of queen g4 all the time.
Hmm.
And it was also played by Dominguez in 2017 twice
Yeah.
against Wesley.
Hmm.
So this rook b1 is a very cool idea, I must say. Black played b6, which is very normal. You want to exchange the light squared bishop, right?
Yeah, I would love to do that. If he exchanges this, that's good for black.
Yes, strategically it's good because then you lose the advantage of two bishops, and the c8 bishop, which is kind of one of the major problems in French, you get rid of it.
Correct.
But it does come at the cost of something like queen g4. Very nice move.
Yeah, and now G7 is attacked, and
Yes,
black has three ways to sort of defend it. One is King F8, the other is Knight F5, and the third one is Rook G8.
yes. Mm, like if you play cd, for example, now
Yeah.
you can white can play queen g7,
Mm-hmm.
rook g8, queen h6, and now queen c3 is not so strong because you can just come back queen d2 and a1 rook is not hanging. So you see the first point of this idea by Vasher.
But
And
after Queen D2, the position is better for white. That one.
yes, because the h pawn is very dangerous.
Mm, okay. Just 3 steps away from queening.
Yes.
Okay.
And instead of cd, if you play, let's say, king f8, uh,
Ah, yeah.
there's there's this nice move rook h3, very typical idea. So now let's say bishop a6
Yeah.
to exchange the bishop, logical. Now you can go rook f3.
Rook F3, threatening Queen E6.
Yes, queen e6. So you black sometimes plays knight f5, or you can take on f1 first for bishop f1,
But if
king
Bishop
f1.
F1, Queen E6 is impossible.
Yes, you're right. This is inaccurate. So first knight f5,
First Knight F5, yeah.
and eventually with some preparation, white can play queen f4 followed by g4,
Okay.
and it's really dangerous for black.
Hmm.
So as you see, with every move there is some downside to it, and
Yeah.
it's not so simple. So Nepo played the third move, rook g8.
But Rook G8 looks like a concession because Rook is not so well placed there on G8.
Indeed, it's not. Also, you lose. There are white has some additional threats, as you will see in the game.
Hmm.
But the pro is that rook h3, rook f3 is now less effective because the king is on e8.
Right.
So
So,
there will be no pin.
but White takes advantage of the king being on E8 and gives a check Bishop
Yeah, this is
b5.
another very typical motif in French. You want to provoke bishop d7 or knight d7, something of that sort, and come back to d3. Then black cannot exchange the bishops.
Yeah.
That's why Nepo played king f8 because he wants to get bishop a6 in.
Very, very nice. Like you can say, it's like a small dance between both the players. Bishop b5 is actually forcing, say, if you play knight c6 or knight d7, then bishop a6 ideas no longer work. But you know, bd7 if played, and if you go back bd3, do you think this idea of bishop a4 can be tried? But now,
But yeah, now as you can see, the downside of rook g8 is this immediate bishop h7, and also with bishop a4 there is dc.
yeah, the dc and the queen attacks the bishop, so you have to be careful
Yes,
there.
yes. So there are a couple of problems.
What is Topalov problems?
No, couple of problems.
Ah, okay,
Sorry.
couple of problems. I thought Topalov had maybe blundered a piece like this. Okay, yeah, that's problematic. So King f8 was played, and this is, I mean, if you think about it, if Black would have played King f8 directly, he would have avoided this problem of Rook g8 because he would have saved a move. But here there is Rook h3, which is very strong, and therefore he had to play Rook g8. But now he moved his king. So I guess MVL played very well, right, in the opening.
Yeah, he was prepared. He was blitzing out. Now black gets bishop a6, but you can see black's coordination is disrupted with this king f8 rook g8, and it looks a bit ugly. And in the entire game, he was struggling to get that out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, next move is something that I would never make as a player, which is d into c5, because first of all, I am kind of making my pawns doubled and isolated. At the same time, my e5 pawn is hanging, so looks really bad at first glance.
So I'll tell you, this DC move was also played in the game Alekseenko Nepo, if you
Yeah,
remember.
yeah,
And at that point, we had told that black should play take back with the pawn.
correct.
Otherwise, white gets this d4 square or b4 square. But in this current situation, you cannot do that immediately because there's rook b8.
Ah, nice tactic. Rook b8 and bishop on a6 is hanging.
Yes. And also, even if that sometimes could not work, for example, c4 ideas, right? Or queen a5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if that doesn't work, can you go back? Yeah.
Yeah, just the sheer fact that the b file is
No.
opened, yeah?
Yeah, and now you can take on a6.
Mm-hmm.
For example, knight a6, and can play knight f3, or just 1 second. Um,
Maybe knight f3 here is an option. e5 is hanging. But sometimes, I mean, giving up e5 pawn can be okay.
yeah, probably just knight f3.
Okay, knight f3.
Yeah, because the problem is, I think, with rook b8 that there's c4, right, in the end.
Yeah. It just sort of, the bishop gets trapped over there.
Yes.
Hmm.
So probably just knight f3. So bc is possible, but white still maintains an edge.
Yeah, this
Interesting.
this rook remains active, right, on this open file. But perhaps it's playable.
Yeah, it was similar to what happened in the game where if eventually black will have to take on d3 and
Okay.
cd.
So
So yeah, one of the points was that in that game we discussed that dc is possible, and in French, I'll also show one more idea like in the opening.
Okay.
Um, Here, for example, black could take cd,
Mm-hmm.
cd, and queen c3 check.
Yeah.
But white just simply plays bishop d2, queen d4, something like knight f3, or you can knight f3, queen e4, and just bishop e2. And for one pawn, white gets a lot in return. He opens so many diagonals for his pieces, and black has wasted so much time with his queen. It's usually this compensation much worth much more worth than a pawn.
Okay. Right. It reminds me of this sort of Korchnoi gambit as well in the French. I don't know if I can just show it very quickly. ND2, uh, NF6, E5, knight D7, bishop D3, C5, C3, knight C6, knight F3, queen B6, castles, and then CD, CD, knight D4, knight D4, queen D4, and somehow like a similar position where you get a lot of open diagonals for your
And
bishop.
just imagine the same position without the bishop on f8. It's even worse.
Yeah, right. So that's how in the whenever actually opening up the position usually favors white.
Yeah, if correctly timed.
Correct.
And
Sorry, this one you were showing here.
yeah, so that's why this DC move is not so surprising, because now you open up uh, diagonals and files for your pieces.
Okay, so what if I take on e5? Is it very silly if I take pawn on e5 with a check?
92, 92.
Yeah, queen e5, knight e2, and yeah, now okay, maybe bd3 first,
Yeah, CD.
cd, and bc. Yeah, like I
No, but then bishop f4, and you lose a piece.
and b8 is hanging. Okay, so I cannot do that. Let me go knight d7, at least develop my one piece here. And if bishop f4, I want to play queen f5.
But even that position is kind of suspicious.
Yeah, but if you look at it, this is actually pawns are equal on the board, so it's not like white has sacrificed any material.
You can play probably CB.
Yeah, knight b6 or ab maybe also.
Some A4, bishop A3.
Yeah, and this bishop is strong piece.
Yeah, I don't even know the pawn count.
No,
Probably
it's equal. Yeah, it's equal pawns, so white should be happy here.
Yeah, it's very dangerous. It's a possibility. I mean, you can play AB though. It's kind of better.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
But you know, some rook h3 and rook f3, queen b4, bishop f4. So many ideas. It's definitely a possibility. I'm not ruling it out.
Okay. Good. So we understand. Basically, I want to improve the understanding of this position. What happens with different possibilities. But Nepo
Yeah.
took.
Yeah, CD, knight d7.
Mhm.
That's probably a good move. d4, also normal.
Yeah.
BC. And now this move was very nice. Queen d1.
Queen comes back, undevelops itself, and you say it's a nice move.
Well, the point is, now the queen on g4 doesn't have much to do. This rook h3, rook f3 ideas don't really work because the king in the center is kind of fragile. So always there will be some cd, queen c2 ideas, and so on.
Yeah.
So queen has done its job on g4. It broke the harmony of black's pieces, and now it does more of a defensive job on the king side. So all these entry squares, for example, cd, cd, queen c2 is no longer possible, and the only alternative to queen d1 was knight e2, which looked quite normal.
Yeah.
And now you just want to play castles, for example. But there's rook b8,
Take.
take queen b8. And now imagine the same position with queen on d1. All your light squares would be protected, queen b3. And then now black has this option of coming queen b3, queen c2.
Yeah.
And the queen on g4 is not really doing anything. It eventually needs to be relocated.
So
and now there's one very cool idea, which I would like to show you. So let's say I castle.
Test, yeah? You're going to test me?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. I'm excited.
And black doesn't want white to play DC and open up the position. Then he'll get this d4 square like in the game of Alekseenko and Nepo.
Yeah.
This c4.
Yeah.
How would you play as white here?
Okay. It's a cool idea, so I should Look at cool. The first move which came to my mind was a4 with the idea of bishop a3, trying to get the bishop there. But then you have ideas like queen b3 and uh, doesn't let me develop so easily. F4, knight g3, f5 is another idea which could be possible. But somehow I don't like the black queen which is coming in all the time over there.
You're right. That's the most annoying.
Yeah, so how do I stop it is the question.
You can either stop it or counter it.
Yeah, I have
Two
to.
ways.
I think right now is the time to counter. If you don't bring your queen back to d1, you have to try to counter it. So knight f4 with the idea of some sack on e6 is one possibility.
Knight f4, then just queen b6, for example, or king e8.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was not very sure of knight f4. I don't like it so much.
It's a very unusual idea, I would say.
Really.
So you can rule out your regular f4 and stuff.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I wasn't thinking of that.
f4 is pretty
Okay.
normal. It's not a bad
Okay.
idea at all.
Okay. Can I see the rook on g8 is really out of play? Yeah. So if I can do this, or maybe it's not working. Rook d1, d2, b2. But
Awesome. Congratulations. That's the strongest idea in this position.
really, wow, feels good.
It, Sagar, you're improving every day.
Yes, I told you, yeah, like one of my friends actually called me today and said, if you continue this with Vidit, you will reach GM strength. But the problem is you won't play any tournament, so it's useless.
But I can see a lot of improvement. And rook d1, d2, b2 is not like the first idea which comes to your mind. Yeah, it's a bit unusual,
Yeah,
a bit artificial.
you sort of
Yes.
told me to not look at standard ideas, so it helped a bit over there. Otherwise, I was thinking of f4, knight g3, f5, which seems more normal.
Yes, yes. It's also possible f4, but this rook d1 is very strong.
Yeah, yeah, great.
So knight d2 is a possibility, but queen d1 I like more. It keeps the game in control.
Yes.
And now if you play like rook b8,
I
you
just
can
have
just
one question here.
take knight e2, and now you don't need to worry about all these entries, yeah, on c2 and b3. Now you can just do your castles, f4, g4.
Hmm.
One another advantage of queen being on d1 that you free up the g pawn, f4, g4, f5. Very standard idea.
Yeah.
So sorry, you were saying something?
No, no, I was just saying that if in this position, which we were looking after queen d1, if black had his king on g8 and rook on f8, like a proper castled position, then I think white is lost already. It's just because the rook is kind of out of play on g8 is why white is
Yeah.
maybe better here.
Yeah, it looks like this Fisher random position.
Yeah.
So queen a5 was a good move, kind of an intermediate move.
Yeah.
You force bishop d2 because c3 is hanging, and if knight e2, there's cd, of course.
Yes.
So bishop d2, and now rook b8. But the entire point of this line was, let's say after knight e2, which happened in the game, you develop to like put the queen on a6, for example, rook b1, queen b1, and queen a6.
Yeah.
It's black has to kind of play on the light squares, right?
Yes.
Because the point, you would like to bring the knight to c4, but if you play knight b6 immediately, white can play c4 himself, and again the position opens up. Queen a3, and now very typical idea, rook h3. So all white pieces are suddenly in the game.
Nice.
The king on f8 will really not feel safe with rook b3, dc, and all kinds of attack coming.
Yeah.
So this was a very good move, queen a6, because you get out of the spin. Also, you stop white from castling.
Yeah.
And I thought this was the entire point of Nepo's play, but he thought for like I think half an hour or something in this position. And Nepo usually plays very quickly, so definitely he didn't feel very comfortable. When your king is weak and the moves are not so easy. You see, French is not a bad opening. It's not like Black is lost here, but the moves are tough. It's not simple.
Right.
And he played a very normal looking move, but after this, I already don't see how to defend. It's such a strategically dangerous move.
You mean c4?
Yes, you get this b3 square and all this stuff, but you close all the sources of your counterplay
Right.
on the queen side. You might even get a3 pawn, but it's not so valuable because white will just go castle f4, g4, f5, and like where is black's counterplay? Every time white wanted to do this, there was always some kind of annoying ideas on the queen side. But after c4, you close that, and then it's very hard to contain white's play. So after I think c4 it should already be the decisive mistake in a way.
Wow, amazing! It's amazing that players of Nepo strength can also make decisions like these, which are, they can understand that this is strategically dangerous, but then they make it. And
yeah, usually you do such a move when you don't see like a clear way to play. It's not like a move you play willingly. Because of course you know that you give up. There are a lot of concessions. But yeah, as I told, like in French, you have to. There are some people who play really well with black, like Vallejo, Pons, and Paco. He plays really well. So because he knows he has played a lot of games, he has very good understanding and feeling.
yeah,
So he knows, for example, where to put which pieces. But Nepo is usually a knight off player, and there are many open positions, right, in knight off. And this is completely different kind of stuff. The king is not like stuck like this. You don't have dark square weaknesses.
So I want to tell the viewers that when it comes to top level chess, opening preparation is one thing, but these players also depend upon the feel of a position, a feel of the opening, and which is very important because here you can clearly see that if Nepo had been playing French all his life, he would have not made this decision of c4. It's clearly that he hasn't played enough French here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's only if he has not played enough French. Also, the moves are not so easy.
But I would say this rook b1, queen b1, queen a6, not very difficult, right? Because it's also a standard idea like to cut.
Yeah, but let's say I play f3 in this position because I want to play king f2.
Yeah.
And I want to play g4 next. How do you play with black?
Well, maybe.
How do you untangle this king on f8 and rook on g8?
My plan could be knight c6 with king e7 and rook b8.
But there is always queen h7.
Queen h7 is an irritating.
But yeah, it's possible. Knight c6, king f2. But if you go king e7, I think I have queen h7.
Yeah, and can I do? Okay, it would be too slow if I did queen c8 and stuff like that.
Yeah, probably you have to play rook h8 to stop queen h7. But you see, these moves are not so simple.
Yeah.
Like you feel like after g4, king e7, g5. I mean, with black, you would of course feel a little bit unsure, especially when you see it from afar.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with you. So it's not like queen a6 was just clean equality. There was still quite a bit of.
Yeah, but after c4, it's one-sided play. White just castles, and if you had taken on a3, you can play like, for example, queen c2, and like some queen h7 ideas or rook a1. You connect the rooks, but I like this rook a1. It's very simple. You move the queen, let's say b3. You can just take on a7, or if you go queen b2, rook a7, king e8, just some bishop c1, and you get this bishop 1, this diagonal. I mean, white's play is very simple.
Yeah.
Whereas with black, you're already struggling. I think this position is probably lost because let's say queen b6, you have queen a4.
Yeah.
And you just see the difference in the value of the pieces, right?
Yes.
Very active.
Queen b5, bishop a3, and.
Yeah, you can even avoid. Sorry, you can even avoid the exchange of queens. That's even better Probably go queen a1 or queen
Yeah.
c2, and then bishop a3 next.
Right. Okay.
But probably it was still better maybe to get some active play because what he played in the game, he was really struggling. So he played rook b6,
Mm.
queen c2.
Now has to stop queen at 7 ideas at some point. So
Yeah, well, I mean, queen h7 is only a threat when black tries to play knight c6, king e7. Otherwise, queen on h7 doesn't do much. But what else to do, yeah, with black? That's the problem. He
yeah.
played rook h8. Okay, I don't think it's correct. Maybe he should have looked for some, play like rook a6, knight b6. But, it looks very ugly. White still has great chances. f4, g4 is coming.
Yeah.
He played rook 8 and now a4. Like the only source of counterplay which black had was to take on a3. Now that's also gone.
Right.
It's probably already lost. It's harsh, but it's probably true. And king e8. I really like how Washer played the next game. I mean, you can still play f4, g4, and it's still very good advantage for white. But rook b4 is cute.
Yeah. He says like I'm going to solidify my queen side first and then go to the king side. First king
Exactly.
side. Yeah.
No, he doesn't need to worry about rook b1 or rook b3 ideas.
Yeah.
Knight c6, very logical that you attack it. And now f4. This is very nice.
By the way, Alekseenko also put his rook on b4 for
And
sacrifice.
sacrificed against Nepo. That's a good, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. And now if you take on b4, cb, rook b4, what would you play with white? Small test. Tactics test.
Looks like clean. Yeah. Queen c. Rook a4. No, but queen c3. Yeah. It's just
Yeah. Queen c3 just wins a piece.
correct.
And probably you have to play queen a6,
Yeah.
but like f5. There's fe threat, so you'll play knight f8, but then b5, queen b7. There's bishop a5. At least you can win back the rook. You can go bishop b4. Play bishop c5 next. I mean, it's just white pieces are just storming.
Yeah. The bishop is a complete monster.
So then next he had to play knight e7 back. f5, but it's not the end because as you'll see in the game, he got the bishop to a3. He'll take on e7 and then play g4.
This was really cool.
Very typical idea.
Yeah, rook h b8. And now this is tremendous. Yeah, g4. I really like this because now it opens up the queen's path to g6, and then all these pawns are just too weak.
Exactly. And this pawn on h5 now plays such a crucial role.
Yeah.
To bind down black's.
Such methodical play. Yeah, it's very methodical by MVL.
And Washer, like when he gets such a clear cut and direct play, he's very good. He doesn't really mess up usually.
So
and you could see that Nepo was down on time, which rarely happens. Throughout the game, he was down on time, so he was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now, it looks like the pawns will be balanced, but this pawn on f5 breaks the pawn chain of black and leads to more losses. So it's not the same pawn, the value isn't the same.
I think this entire thing is different because of this guy here on h5. It is the key pawn because once f5 falls, even these pawns fall, and then it just you lose completely.
Yeah, now there's knight f5. There will be e6. The d5 pawn is weak.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't need to explain. It's obvious that white is clearly better.
Yeah, somehow what I fear in such positions, because your king is too weak, you may go in with your queen for the kill, and then suddenly black gets some counterplay. This is always the thing which you have to be careful about.
True. And that's what he did. I think Nepo tried to get some play on the king, but Washer handled very well. Black just has too many weaknesses. In the game, white played king g2, knight g3, defended the king, and the queen kind of took all the pawns.
Yeah, queen g4. King G2.
Yeah, now see the knight on d7, it's terrible. If the same knight was on e7, at least you could play knight f5 and stuff like that.
Right. Take. King E7. Queen A3. King D8. Queen D6. Material is even, but white's pieces are much more quality.
Completely overwhelming. Yeah.
G5, Hg. I mean, the threat is now, if let's
Just
say
queen
it was,
d5.
sorry, Queen D5.
Just queen d5. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's no way to kind of prevent it.
Yeah, queen d2 check, you have king h3, and king is very safe on h3. There's no way to give another check even.
And now E6 is coming.
Yes.
So he played G5, but then after Hg, H5, G7, it was already game over.
Smooth victory.
Beautiful game. I seriously, I think the points to remember from this game are, first of all, rook b1, a small little rook move, and then what I
Yes.
really found nice was dc5. Although it's standard, but you break your pawn structure, which is nice, and then bringing your queen back to d1. This was also very good move by MVL.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think c4, as Vidit pointed out, was a strategic error because it stopped all the queenside play for black, and now white could just play on the king side, open, free hand for him. But the nice technique to be seen is when MVL first plays rook to b4 instead of just starting the play, and then starts, once the queen side is solidified, he goes on the king side. And I think the final moment is this bishop coming to a3, picking up this knight, and then g4. Amazing.
Very clean.
Maybe one of the strongest games of the event. I mean, very nice game.
Yeah, could be.
Okay, with it, that was great. We enjoyed it a lot, and we look forward to analyzing more games from round 8 and beyond.
Yeah.